What's up, everyone? Thank you for checking out and supporting this episode of Raised Geek. This week, after an actor's strike delay, it's finally here. Dune Part 2 is in theaters, and we've both seen it. So let's talk about it. I'm Chris. As always, I'm here with my buddy Don. How we doing, man?
Chris, what is up today, my friend? Everything is all right on this weekend, March weekend. We are
Daylight
good.
savings weekend. We
Oh,
lose that
dang.
hour tonight. So if we're
Uh,
playing video games tonight at 3 in the morning, it's really 4. But yeah, weekend, whatever, pushing through March, pushing towards spring. Pretty soon it's going to
and
be summer, so
exactly. Summertime. Summertime's around the corner,
so it's
guys.
been nice having an actual Saturday. We've been in like the 90s and now we're like in the 50s, so it's kind of
Mm.
feels like winter, but I still didn't stop me today from going to get an ice cream cone. When's the last time you
Oh.
went to got a scoop of ice cream at like Baskin Robbins?
Oh man. I don't know. It's not very, it does not happen very often. Um, I know at a movie
You don't
theater no,
ice.
there's a movie theater we used to go to that we don't really anymore.
Hmm.
We've chosen a different theater to see our movies, like where I saw Dune 2 yesterday.
Ugh. Yeah.
But that it was in a mall, like an outdoor mall, and right outside the theater is an ice cream store.
Yeah.
So like when we go see movies there, we would stop in and get like a cone.
Nice.
Um
Could you bring it in the
also
movies?
no, I don't think so. And that would be weird and messy and like you can't really eat ice cream in the dark. Like you don't know what's
That's
going
true.
on.
That's true. That's
Um
true.
Also my wife found out like at some point over the past few years that she's like kind of lactose intolerant. So we don't do ice cream too often. They have a lot of dairy-free options
Hmm.
nowadays, like almond milk instead of milk, so like we can jam on that.
Yeah.
But it's been a minute for ice cream. Why did you enjoy your ice cream
I did
experience
enjoy
today?
my ice cream experience, but earlier this week I was watching like the news and everybody's freaking out about Joe Biden answering serious foreign questions while eating ice cream.
Man's
Um,
just gonna have an ice cream cone. Leave him alone.
but my thing when I saw it was, man, that ice cream looks good. And I don't know what he said about anything else. I just was like, I got to get me an ice cream cone this week. So we were running some errands and shopping, and I was like, all right, before we go home, I'm stopping at that Baskin Robbins to get me a cone. So delish.
Are you a waffle cone man or like a
No, I'm a
regular
cake cone.
cone?
I like just regular cone.
Okay. I dig a waffle cone. I'm also very boring when it comes to like, let's say 31 flavors. Like it's right there in the name, 31 flavors, so a ton of different choices. But I always just like chocolate. I just want something chocolate. Like my wife will order something like butter pecan specialty cotton candy flavor. I'm just like, I'll have chocolate. Like what?
Hmm.
All these choices and you're just gonna get chocolate? Like, but I like what I like.
Yep.
I know
That's,
I
yeah.
chocolate's dependable to me. That's what I want.
Yep. Sometimes I'm just like, I just want chocolate. Sometimes I'm like, I just want a vanilla cone. Like, I just want vanilla. Like,
Yeah.
vanilla's good. So,
Yeah.
like, just give it to me. If I could get
Yeah.
like a chocolate vanilla cone, it's over.
There you
But
go.
enjoyed that. So I'm all hyped up on sugar and vodka. So
Nice.
should
That'll
be
be
a good
fun.
show. Should be a good show.
Sugar and vodka, the name of the latest Taylor Swift album or something. I don't
Sounds about right. But yeah, I'm super pumped that you were able to see Dune 2. I went and saw it last week after it came out. Just kind of made the best opportunity to go see it. Man, I was so glad I did go see it. I there was kind of really hyped up and ready for it, and kind of mad that it got delayed from October till March. But we're here. We've seen it. The fact that this movie exists was completely shocking to me. I remember when they originally were making Dune and they were like, "Hey, we're splitting the movie in two," and I said, "No," because I was like, "There's no way Dune makes enough money to get that second half. Like, we'll see how part one does before we do part two." I was like, "We're never getting part two, just never." Then there was a pandemic, and then they were like, "We're going to release it on HBO at the same time," and I'm like, never getting this movie." So the fact that I kept thinking that while I was sitting watching this movie, going, "I cannot believe this movie exists."
Well, is that why? Is that just because it's such an obscure sci-fi book that doesn't have like huge public appeal, so it's hard to believe that something based on that would exist that has such mass public appeal?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
because it is a dense sci-fi. Like it's kind of one of those properties that usually comes across as being like for nerds.
Hmm.
and those have a very niche audience. And this, I mean, this book and this story has been told many variations. Like they've done many miniseries on sci-fi. There was the David Lynch film in the '80s. There was, you know, a lot of different versions of this where people have tried to tell it. And usually it's like the hardcore have watched it, but it's never like cracked into the mainstream pop culture. And the fact that they were able to do that, and I mean, I know the cast, which we'll obviously get into, um, it goes a long way. They basically grabbed every hip actor and actress and put them in this movie. So the fact that you know what they were able to do, it makes sense. But it's still just one of those things where it's just from a property standpoint, it just doesn't seem like this type of story that would be able to break through.
No, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, sci-fi isn't the thing that's like you really put at mass public interest.
Hmm.
It sci-fi, like dense sci-fi, appeals to a very niche audience who appreciates that stuff, but you don't really see it like breaking through in this way. And a lot of it I think does have to do with the casting and the hype and the um and all that. But yeah, good points. I
Well,
agree
even
with you. I'm
even
glad we
when
had
you
it.
like think about when you're watching this movie and you're seeing all like the weird costumes when they're on that
Hmm.
like Harkonnen planet and everybody's kind of got these weird like prosthetics and kind of like really weird and like weird sci-fi as well doesn't really go. I mean, you got the Baron who's just this big blob of just fat just floating around.
Right.
You just have
The
a
only
lot of just weird too, and a lot of times that doesn't people don't like weird
Yeah, the only comparison you can really make is Star Wars, but Star Wars has been around since movies have been here since the 70s, and that's just kind of its own thing. You know what I mean?
when Star Wars
And
was made for kids. I mean, it
right.
was made for kids. It, for the most part, still is for kids. Their most successful things are cartoons or built off of cartoons.
Sure.
So it's like it's still different in that way. But yeah, Star Wars, Star Trek are kind of their thing. And they, I mean, Star Wars obviously is pop culture. Star Trek is its own level, but it still never really mass appeal as Star Wars
I think the bottom line is just like anything sci-fi is hard is not you don't picture it as being something that's the number one movie in America
in
in
the
the
world.
world
Yeah.
for weeks on end and being talked about in such a way. So yeah, Dune. I'm glad they kind of hit that status, even though it was unexpected. So I
Like I
agree.
fully believe that if this movie would have came out in October like it was originally supposed to, we'd probably be going into like the Oscars tomorrow night with some nominations for something for this film.
Sure.
Like if some of these other films that are being nominated for Best Picture, I would imagine that Dune 2 would probably be in there. It obviously would be up for all the technical awards. And as we'll dive into here in just a few moments when we start talking about the cast and whatnot, there were some really solid performances in this film. So, like, there's a good chance that they might have been able to squeak some of this stuff in there. And I mean, the whole landscape of the award season could have been somewhat different. Granted, Oppenheimer's, you know, still gonna Oppenheimer, but um,
Oppenheimer's gonna Oppenheimer, boys.
so yeah, I mean that just seems to be what's gonna happen. But you know, I mean, it could have still looked different,
Yeah,
is
I
what I'm
agree.
saying. So just kind of crazy that it's there. And let's dive into our Dune 2 review here. And we're
Sure.
going to start up with a little bit of a synopsis like we always do. So picking up immediately after Dune Part 1, which was kind of cool. Paul
Mm.
Atreides unites with Shani and the Fremen while seeking revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. So that's just kind of a quick rundown
Sure.
there. So we both kind of rewatched Dune 1.
We did. I did. I saw Dune 2 yesterday and which was Friday as we're recording this, and I watched Dune 1 on Wednesday.
Mhm.
So I've had 5 hours of Dune in the last 72
Nice.
hours or so. So yeah. Yeah.
How did you rewatching Dune? How did it like kind of get you excited for Dune 2 or remember like oh shit, yeah, or just like
It,
kind of how did it feel?
it definitely did help. I'm glad I did because I'm like you just said that Dune 2 kind of picks up almost immediately where Dune 1 ended. Them going further into the sand planet and there was a lot of stuff in there that like I remembered, but I was just glad I could revisit it because what Dune Part One was 2021, COVID era. I mean, that's a little ways back to remember. So I'm glad I could revisit and refamiliarize myself with the characters and the story and where we are. And Dune Part One is just a fantastic movie in itself.
Hmm.
So I mean, it was definitely worth watching again. I think we had an episode on Dune Part One back when it originally, was out during the COVID era, and we both watched it on at home TV. Um, yeah, dude, I was happy to rewatch it just to kind of remember where we are, and that's just a great movie.
It
Also,
really is.
you know, um, one could argue that it's on like these two movies are almost on even footing at the end of the day. They're just two parts of the same story, and it was just I'm glad I watched it. I don't know, I guess. How about you?
No, yeah, it's been a while since I watched Dune, and recently I picked up like the 4K disc, so I really wanted to watch it on that. So that was definitely fun to watch just to see what it looks like in 4K, true,
Hmm.
disc fashion. So I watched it on physical media, had a good time with it just as much as I did before, and I just got me so pumped up. Like, man, this is such a good movie, and it was so well done. I've read the book about 3 times, more or less throughout
Okay.
my life. So I read it once when in like high school and I had no idea what I read. Like I'm like, huh? What's happening? Where are the worms? And just really wanted to be into it more than I could my teenage brain could process it. And then read it a couple times as the adult. Um, and then, after like I said, the movie came out, it was like having that like sometimes when you read a book, when a movie is based on a book and you read the book after you watch the movie, you kind of have those visuals in your head. So you can
Sure.
sometimes process what things are happening. Sometimes I'm reading and I don't fully process moments. But then when I'm
Yep.
reading after I saw the movie, I'm like, okay, I remember this. So then you can sometimes it helps me clarify what I'm reading and the stuff that's not in the movie sticks out a little bit more. But anyway, I just had a blast watching it again and got me. So I watched it, like I said, that Tuesday or Wednesday before I went and saw it on Thursday. And like I said, had 5 hours to do myself and loved it,
Yeah.
man. It
Yeah.
was super good. And I was super pumped to see part two. And then we come to part two. What'd you think, Don? What'd you think of
Ooh.
part two?
Um, oof. I mean, it's a spectacle. It
Hmm.
is definitely a spectacle.
Yeah.
It's big, man. It's big. It's got a lot to it. Um, Probably one of the better movies I've seen in recent memory. Uh,
Hmm.
just very well made. I don't like throwing the word perfect around too freely because
Hmm.
that has to mean something is perfect to say it is, but it's close. Man, it is close. This movie was kind of everything you want from a movie. It's just um the story is engrossing, the visuals suck you in, and you're like, this is a 2 hour 45-minute movie, which is long by my standards. Like it's hard to invest in that much time because I don't know, I'm a 90-minute movie guy,
Yep.
uh, if I can be. But this movie just flowed so well from beginning to end that I didn't mind the time, and that's rare for me to like just be like so engrossed for 3 hours, close, damn near 3 hours.
I could
But
have
just
done
like,
more.
yeah, just visually fantastic, sound, music, atmosphere, cast, all of it. Man, I was just entertained from beginning to end. I don't know. It's hard to say. A lot of it has to do with the script and what you saw on screen and the performances, and Denis Villeneuve is a genius, I guess. At the end of the day, it's starting to seem like. But yeah, just one of the more fun times I've had at the movies in quite a while. And this is I love when a movie that's a blockbuster is also very good. Like this is Oppenheimer all over again. Just like
Hmm.
a big movie that makes a ton of money, but it's well deserved because it's so well made.
Yeah.
Like when we were coming up, blockbuster movies were just like made a billion dollars, but they're just so like corny and cheesy and like Twister and Men in Black and Independence Day. But like a movie like this that is just so well made at the same time as being like a blockbuster is I love to see that. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I just had a great time with this film, and we'll get into it. But before we do, your thoughts on Dune
I
2,
mean,
initial feelings,
I'm not,
general.
yeah, obviously I'm not going to drag it out too long of just kind of being like, I love this movie.
Mm.
Kind of already been gushing on it since we started this conversation.
Yeah.
So not really much of a surprise. I mean, a lot of that you said, surprise, surprise, I mirror. Like it just was fun to watch. It was emotional when it needed to be emotional. It just told a really well done story. It's not obviously the story was written, the book was written in like 1954. So like a lot of the story beats or there's a lot of ideas in this story that's been kind of ripped off across other stories, as well as you have all of like the Messiah, and you have all of these other stories coming out of even just religion and all of these stories that are like as old as time that you have weaved throughout Dune. So it's like there's a familiarity with it, but it's just done on this level of just sci-fi and scope. And like I said, you read the book and they're talking about these ships being so big and you still just like struggle to imagine. And then you get there and you're watching it on the movie and you're just like, holy shit, that ship is huge. Like, why does that exist? And then as we talked about, like seeing it on the big screen, you're just like, yeah, man, like if that ship was huge, like you could just get that scale so well, and it was just kind of just like I said, a spectacle to watch. I agree with you; it's not perfect. I think that there are pacing things with some of those things. There are some moments, big story moments that feel rushed, um, just because of how you have to tell the story. It's crazy, like reading the book and knowing that obviously it's they have that luxury of being able to spread stuff out and give you more detail, but like from when part one ends to when part two begins in the book there's a 2 year gap, and here it was immediate. So you're like you had no 2 years of him, Paul, with the Fremen and him running around with these people. You have so his rise feels a lot more earned in the book because you there's more of that journey and he spends more time. Here it's really kind of quick because they didn't want Jessica to have that kid before the end of this movie. Um, in the book, by the time you hit that war at the end, his sister is already born and is like 4 years old. So like there's reasons why they didn't want to try to put that on screen, and it makes sense because when other people have tried to put a 4 year old on screen that can have the mind of an adult, it freaks people out. So it's
And
really hard to do without being cheesy.
things always kind of have to get shifted a little bit also when you're
Mm-hmm.
doing adaptations. You have to
Yeah.
make it make sense for the screen
Well, and
if you're
that's and
coming from a
yeah,
book.
and that's what like the fact that this exists, as I said in the beginning, is just unbelievable, and the fact of how much of this story they were able to tell and how well they were able to do it. Like, yeah, there's little inconsistencies, and yes, if you're a Dune snob, you can be like, well, this didn't work for me because in the book, this, that, and the other. Well, that's fine. If you can't separate the two, then no one can help you. Like you have to be able to separate the two. But even like Brian Herbert, the author's son, is just like when he had a private screening of this and finally saw it, he was like, yeah, there's never been a better adaptation of this book. Like you can't there's nothing else that you could do that would make it better than what we did. So it's like in
Hmm.
its own way it is perfect, so depends on how you want to look at it, but it was an outstanding film, and it's been a week and a half and I still think about it.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go see it again. I definitely want to see it again in theaters before it goes. I know you texted me about it and we talked about, did this really need to be seen on the biggest screen possible?
I think so.
I mean, I do too. And I
I
know
think
I've
so.
complained about that in other movies. I remember they said that about Black Widow, and they're like, Black Widow, see this on the biggest screen because we were coming out of the pandemic, and they're really trying to. It became a marketing line post pandemic. Like, you got to get back to the movies, so see this shit on the biggest screen. And every time I go see one of those movies, it's just
Yeah,
not.
I know. I know it. I know the with part one, it probably broke, everyone involved, all the crew and cast and everybody that we had to kind of watch it the way we did at home.
Yeah,
because it came out during COVID. Um, because the same could be said about the first film. It probably would have been a better. I wish I could have seen that movie on the big screen, but you know, we were just in that whole time and everything.
I did.
So
I do have my TV. I did buy a new TV to watch Dune at home.
there you see, there you
At
go.
the time because I was like, I can't really make it to the theater to see this, but I know that this movie needs to be seen on a big screen. So I was like, I'm going to buy a new TV. I need a new TV. It's going to be bigger than what I currently have because I'm not watching Dune on my phone. I'm not watching on an iPad. I'm not
I know.
watching on like a 32-inch TV.
No,
I was like, this shit needs to be watched large.
this
And
is like him and Christopher Nolan. Their movies are like go see them on big if you can. You know what
it's
I mean?
and why is like for Dune 2, I can kind of understand it to a point. Just the sheer volume of the ships and stuff and just the spectacle that it was. But even like Nolan movies, like I'm kind of mad I didn't go see Oppenheimer in the theaters. And I
Me
don't really
too.
know why.
Me too. It's because they make their movies for that. Like
Yeah.
it didn't. I think it would have. I loved Oppenheimer. We talked about it. You know, we had our episode on the best movies of last year, and both of us had it in our top five. Um, I just think the way he makes his movies and the way also Denis Villeneuve makes his movies are just like you got to go see these in the theaters, guys. These are epic, iconic spectacle movies that aren't meant to be watched on your TV in your basement or your living
Mhm.
room. Like you need to go watch these on a movie screen, and that's what Dune
Right.
2 was as well. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we're in agreement.
Yeah, and there's a reason why. Well, Christopher Nolan's been doing his Oscar tour and doing all these interviews. He's been gushing about a lot of directors, including Zack Snyder, which we talked about in a previous episode of him talking about how much he really enjoys Zack Snyder. And Denny, how do you say it? I already screwed it up by hesitating.
No, it's Denis Villeneuve. It's
Yes,
very
there it is.
yeah,
But even him, he's just been on this like campaign for Denis and just being like, hey, man, this movie is outstanding. This
go
movie was
see it.
compared to everything. Every great sequel this movie has been compared to. It's been compared to Godfather 2, Empire Strikes Back. Like they're comparing, saying like, this is your Empire Strikes Back, Denis. Like, enjoy it.
Yeah, I saw, and in addition to that, I've also seen it compared to like the Two Towers and the Dark Knight, and just like every sequel that surpasses the original, pretty
Yeah.
much. Uh,
It's crazy.
yeah,
Like this, like Dune 2 is somehow now in
yeah,
that like history. It's
it's in
awesome.
those conversations. Yeah,
It's awesome. And now I know we talked about it, but the cast for this movie is insane. And I think it obviously clearly helped, the fact that you had, I know there were a lot of people who went and saw part one to see Zendaya and were like, she was in 30 seconds at the end. You like she wasn't even in this movie, but she sold people on the first one. I know there were a lot of people, my coworker, 23-year-old girl wanted to see Dune part one because Zendaya was in it. And I'm just like, that's crazy to me, but she's not going
prepare
to be in this movie.
yourself. It's funny because I saw people come into the theater yesterday that I know did not watch the first one. I just know they didn't. Or I could just tell by looking at them. It's like, you didn't watch Dune 1. You're just here because of the hype and because it's Zendaya and it's Timothy Chalamet,
Yeah.
um, who's also like, one of the hot list actors going right now. And to a lesser extent, like Florence Pugh. Like, these people are in this movie. I know that's why you're here. I hope you're ready for this because this isn't going to be some like, uh, this isn't like a Marvel movie you're about to sit down and watch. This is going to be something different.
Yeah.
And hopefully they were entertained. But yeah, definitely the cast. The cast, I think, helps with the appeal to people who might not normally go see a, you know, dense
Mhm.
sci-fi film.
Yeah.
I will agree with that. But yeah,
Yeah.
great cast though.
I was gonna
Great
say
cast.
Austin Butler was another one that you throw in there. There were a lot of people who I can guarantee you went to go see it with him, especially younger, because he was
Sure.
like I said, Austin Butler doesn't mean anything to me. Like obviously I know he was Elvis, but I
Mhm.
was too old for his like Disney Channel run.
He was a Disney Channel guy?
He was
I
either
didn't
a
know
Disney Channel or a Nickelodeon, or he was a singer. He was something with for a
that. I only
generation of kids out there, Austin
okay.
Butler is like
A name.
their a name for them. So they were definitely very excited. I'm kind of looking it up now to kind of see.
No, yeah, I agree with I'm the same as you. I only knew him as Elvis, and I mean, he did get nominated for an Oscar for that, for best
He was
lead for that.
outstanding in Elvis.
Yeah, which
I've been nothing but like support. Like I've enjoyed Austin Butler, everything that I've
well,
seen him in. Like,
talk about him first. Then we're talking about the cast,
yeah, he was in a lot of. I don't know if these are Disney, like the Wizards of Waverly Place. Is that Disney?
I guess.
Zoe 101, iCarly,
It sounds like it.
Hannah Montana. Is that was Hannah Montana Disney
Party
or
in the
was that
USA, Chris.
Nickelodeon?
Party in the USA. I don't know. That's all I know.
Okay. He was also in 3 episodes of Arrow.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, like I said, I know he was a big deal for a lot of people. Like he brings in a generation of fans as well. Now, did Timothy Chalamet? What did he blow up from? I know he just kind of was everywhere, but when did that happen? I know he was like because he did Dune. The
mhm.
hell did he do before Dune?
Right. He seems like a name who just came out of nowhere. It's like everyone's like, you kind of look like the guy from Stranger Things, the kid from Stranger Things. But I don't know where he blew up. I know, I mean, he made Wonka after Dune, but before Dune, I
He
don't
was in the
really.
French Dispatch before Dune, so that's a Wes Anderson movie. He was in Little Women, and I know that was a big movie.
He was awesome in his character was hilarious in that Netflix movie with Jennifer Lawrence.
The Don't Look Up.
And yeah, he was hilarious in that. I don't know. He was just like a kind of an indie darling turned just people like him and stuff
Yeah,
that he pops up in. He just kind of became a thing. I think Dune, the first one was kind of his biggest role, and then now he's just continuing that. So
yeah,
um it's funny every time I think about him, I just think about he had an interview one time where like he was talking to Leonardo DiCaprio, who he said was like his hero for movies. That's like the person he looked up to for acting. And he met Leonardo DiCaprio one day, and Leonardo DiCaprio, the advice Leonardo DiCaprio gave Timothy Chalamet for acting in Hollywood, he was like, "All right, you want to make it? Here's my two things you have to follow: no hard drugs and no superhero movies." And that's what he told Timothy Chalamet. He's like, all right, I guess I'll take that to heart. But yeah, he kind of blew up, and um, I don't know. I thought he was great in this film.
yeah.
He
No, he
kind of
was.
he's the lead of this movie, obviously, and was the first one too. The first movie, it was more of a subtle performance. Like he was very quiet and had his moments where he kind of stood out. But this movie, man, Timothy Chalamet got loud and he
Yeah,
got intense and he got in your face and he totally embraced the role of Paul Atreides and the Messiah role and just like man he I was impressed with him in this one. I thought he did a really good job and really kind of carried this movie a lot at
yeah,
put this movie on his back, at certain times and just kind of showed his range. So I'm a fan of this
yeah.
performance.
And I loved the way that they did him and Shani's relationship.
Hmm.
Just they had a lot of quiet moments with the two of them just as they were coming together. Like obviously he was like dreaming about her and felt destined to her in the first movie. So you kind of knew where he fell. Like as soon as he saw her, he's just like, there she is. I've been waiting for you. But like she obviously wasn't. And Zendaya did such a great job of just like wearing those emotions and those like her facial expressions, and she didn't even have to say that much in this movie, and she just like did a tour de force of just like you knew what that girl was thinking just by looking at her face and in every moment throughout the movie, and it was just so cool.
Yeah, I understand totally where you're coming from. She did have that, but I don't know. I wasn't completely moved by her.
Yeah,
Because I felt like a lot of times she just had like a scowl.
it's
Like
true.
every time they showed her, she just had a scowl on her face, and she did have a few moments. Like we'll talk about it, but like when he was writing the sandworm, she had a nice facial expression and emotions. But that sometimes I was just like, I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna talk about that sandworm scene where he rode needed to ride the sandworm. That is honestly one of I think the greatest scenes I've ever seen on film. Like the way that they did that, I was just sitting in a theater, just like the fact that they kept that like close, everything felt real. Like it didn't it, they could have CGI'd it and they could have done it from afar and had the little CGI Timothy Chalamet running around, and the fact that they stayed like almost with him and like falling through the sand and him run, like the way that they put that together with the music and the effects is just like one of the coolest scenes I've ever seen. Like I was sitting
Oh
there
yeah.
watching this going, this is unbelievable.
The wide shot of him when he put the thumper in the ground, and
Mhm.
then you see it coming, and then they go back to Javier Bardem, and he's like, "No, that's too big,"
Yeah.
and they're like, "No, no, no," and they go shoot. They cut back to him, and his face is just like pure confidence, and then
Yeah.
it's a huge shot of him walking back and forth, watching this thing in the distance just come up like jaws through the sand. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That was amazing. Like my,
Yeah.
I wanted to almost tear up
Yeah.
just watching how cool that looked.
Yeah.
And him just kind of walking back and forth. I agree with you. That scene was
Just
that scene went hard.
it's so hard. And then, like I said, then when like the dune kind of fell apart when the worm came through and he's just falling through the sand and you couldn't really see anything, but you can
Mhm.
like, you felt like what he needed to do. And you just felt like you were there in that moment with him and you weren't just watching it. Like you
Yeah,
were
it was.
on that worm. And the way that they were able to just almost show you how they do that,
Yeah,
they showed the hooks digging in and pulling up the little gills, so it's like to keep it from diving down underground. And like they never explained any of that, but they gave you enough of watching it that you knew what they were doing, why they were doing it, everything
yeah.
made sense. And it
It
was just
trans
done in such, I
it
love the fact that the worms never, they almost always seemed, you knew they were gigantic, but they never went out of their way to really show you how gigantic. Yeah, every once in a while the face would come up and stuff, but outside of maybe that big battle at the end when the worms were all riding in, like they never really did a far shot and see like the full worm. It was always kind of like you were on it, you were with it, it was just like I said, I just loved the way that they did that.
No, it was perfect scene. It was brilliant. It like
Yeah.
it took you there. Like
And
it transported you into the role
and
of
it,
Paul, you
and then
know,
like when you see him riding it and everybody stands up and starts cheering, like I wanted to cheer. I
right?
was like, hell yeah, like I'm getting chills now just thinking about it. Like
Yeah. That
that
was
was
great
just like
scene.
just such a good, I loved that scene. That was probably one of my favorite like in the movie.
No,
Um
I agree. I totally agree. It was
but yeah, I
no,
can
she was good.
I know.
I agree with you. I think she was good, but just the constant scowling, and I get it. The script kind of called for it. She's an
Yeah.
angry person in this movie. She has a lot of reasons to be angry. But I agree with you. Yeah, Zendaya was cool. What did
Well,
you think of? No, go ahead.
I was gonna say just with her character, and like I said, I might do this a couple times, and we never, I guess, we said spoilers, but whatever.
They get it.
They get it. But like one of the there was is kind of difference, and it's different time and everything, but like Shani in the book always felt a little bit more understanding of why Paul was doing the things that he was doing. And she was kind of very strong of a character, but she always kind of still stood by his side a little bit more
Hmm.
and understood and went along with things and didn't kind of like storm off, like especially at the end of the movie when she just kind of was like, I'm out of here, I'm mad at you, Paul, like, and stormed off. Like Shani didn't do that in the book. Like she understood what Paul was doing. And one of the things coming back to like the end of this movie, and we're sitting there, theater silent, right? And we're Paul's talking to the Emperor, talking to Christopher Walken as the Emperor, which is just fucking ridiculous on its own level.
Yeah.
And he's talking with that, and when Paul says like, I will marry your daughter, and as soon as he said that, right behind us this woman straight up gasped. Like he was like, I will marry your daughter and do this, and she was and you just heard this like straight up, it's like so, and it was so good because like that was pure emotion. Like we were at the end of this movie, we're almost 3 hours into the sitting in there in this theater, longer if you're talking trailers, and this woman behind me was so invested in that relationship and these characters that when he said that, she was like shocked. And that was just awesome for me to
No,
like hear. It was so cool.
I'll give it to Zendaya. Her reaction to that was perfect. That was
Yeah.
good act. That was really good acting. Like
Hmm.
her hurt, her like heartbreak, her emotion. It totally uh showed through her just reaction to that, and it like bled through to the viewer, and it made you feel for her. So I definitely give it to her for that. She was good. She
Yeah.
was
I
very
mean,
good.
like I said, nobody was bad in this movie. Who are you about to ask me about? Who are you about to ask me about?
What was I about to ask you about? Oh, just like other cast in general. Like you were talking about how stacked this cast is.
This cast is stacked. And you know what? The
Yeah.
one I'm mad about the most that people are like, oh my God, oh my God. The fact that people are like, Rebecca Ferguson is amazing. Like, where has
Hmm.
anybody been for the past, like, I feel like 10 years? Like,
Hmm.
is this really, you guys, like, as a world, as a society, we're just realizing that Rebecca Ferguson is an amazing actress?
Well,
Like, that
I mean, if you watch the first one, she was good in that one too.
she was, yeah, she was good in the first one. To me, she was, in my opinion, she stole this movie. Like, the things that she did for that character, like, there's so much, and like I said, knowing that character and what she needed to become, and kind of having that whole like reverend mother thing, and kind of almost just going balls to the wall with it a little bit. Like, I don't know, I just really enjoyed her. I always enjoy her though. Like, she was amazing in Doctor Sleep. She was amazing in, I mean, and I see her all the time popping up as like, who is a villain that you just love? And it's always Rebecca Ferguson in Doctor Sleep. You watched Doctor Sleep, didn't you?
I did, and I didn't put it together that that was her,
Like,
but
she was
now I realize it. Yeah.
intoxicating in that movie. Like, you watch that movie and you're just like, I love her.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm terrified of her. Oh no, I hate her. She's horrible. Oh no, I love her. She's like so amazing. Like, she just she was amazing in Doctor Sleep. But
Yeah,
she was
she
in Mission
was.
Impossible movie. She's just been in so much. So it's just shocking to me that it's like everyone's like, Rebecca Ferguson. Like, this now people know her name apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
She was very good. She was very good. I thought she was good in the first one. I just put it together she was in Doctor Sleep when you said that. I didn't realize, but yes, she was very good in that movie. Doctor Sleep, underrated film, I think.
really is.
Um but yeah, that I can hear that. I think the person to me who stole this movie, like cast wise, huge cast, everybody was great. Like people sit here. I've seen a thing where it's like, who is the best actor in Dune 2? And people just saying like whoever the camera was on at the time. Like
Pretty
everybody
much.
like everybody was good. But to me, I think I'm leaning Javier Bardem. I just think he was in the little bit he had to do in the first one, he was very good and like had a presence
Yeah.
on screen. But in this one, I just feel like, man, every line that guy had, he was the comic relief. He was also like the first major follower of the first guy who really believed in Paul, and just the way he kind of just stood there and delivered everything that was asked of him. I just
Yeah.
every time Javier Bardem was on screen, I was just like, man, this guy's so good. And I knew
Yeah.
he was good, and I've always known he was good. Um, from
Yeah.
No Country to For Old Men, for everything else he's done, he's just like one of our best actors we have. And you forget about him till
Yeah.
he pops up again. You're like, man, this dude's so good.
Yeah.
Um,
He's another one like who's the guy who played Abraham Lincoln that retired, and he was like in
oh, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis. He's one of those ones that you don't think about, but then you
Yeah.
see him, and then he makes everything look so easy, but
Yeah.
like he's one of those things, and he really is just like is in that caliber to me, like
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
just being like he just makes any role, and whether it's fun, whether it's terrifying, whether it's heartfelt, he just owns it
Yeah.
and just is able to make you feel things, and that's just obviously a good sign of it. A great actor.
Now, obviously, Christopher Walken, Florence Pugh, Josh Brolin, everybody did great. But we can't be done talking about the cast before what do you Austin Butler? I know you brought it up. He's kind of like the new guy around. He's the big bad kind of this movie. I've seen a lot of people out there saying, "Is this the best villain performance I've ever seen?" Blah blah blah. He took his inspiration from Heath Ledger and Gary Oldman. That's what he's kind of said. Gary Oldman maybe in Fifth Element and maybe something else, but just I don't know. I wasn't too familiar with Austin Butler. I never saw Elvis. I'll
Okay.
put it out there. So I've never seen the guy act. I know he did get nominated for Oscars for that, but just did you like him? Did you like
Yeah.
that performance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he did great. I wanted more. Like, I really wish they would have had the time to do more and really like give you a like they did a good job of letting you know that he was crazy, but it was a lot of it was because they just kept telling you. They just kind of kept saying like, "Oh, he's unhinged. Oh,
He's
he's crazy.
psychotic.
He's psychotic." And you see that like you only got glimpses of it, and I almost would have liked to see more of him being not just psychotic, but like a little bit more in control. Like you
Mhm.
had there were flashes of it, so you knew it was there, so I could buy in to where he was, what he was doing. I loved whenever they cut to him reacting to things because he always, as a character, looked like he was having fun. Like when Paul like stormed in on the Emperor when
Oh, that
they
was
were
great. That was
in the
great.
thing, and he's just like has this look of almost like glee on his face, like, oh my
No,
God, there's Muad'Dib,
it was
and
joy. It was
it was like
joy.
pure joy. And
Yeah.
just like they throughout that whole from like that portion through the end of the movie, they just kept would cut to him and his just reactions. He didn't say anything, but his reactions just kind of just told so much. And it was just, yeah, he was, like I said, I really enjoyed him. I wanted more. I really think that he could have done more with that character, and I think there was a lot more they could have done. But with the story and the way that they were doing it, that's just kind of how it went. And I thought he did great joining this cast in this movie, doing what he needed to do. But yeah, I would have liked to see more from him. I think
Sure.
there was more he could have done. Just it almost felt like a tease.
That's
Like
what
I
I was
felt
gonna
like he
say.
could have done more.
I agree pretty much wholeheartedly with everything you said. I think he did a great job with the screen time he had, but it should have been more. I feel like it could have been more. Sometimes villains do get the short end of the stick, and the guy didn't get introduced into this film until almost halfway through the movie.
Mhm,
So I just kept waiting for him to show up, because I saw all the trailers and saw the
mhm,
previews of him in the scene, like a clip of the scene of him and Paul's knife fight at the end of this film, which was, you know, amazing. Um, but yeah, the screen time they did give him, he ate it up, man. He ate it up, and he just
mhm,
fucking he brought it. And really talented actor. I thought that he really embodied the role and kind of integrated into the cast perfectly. And um I don't say it's the best villain I've ever seen on screen like some people are saying, but it's damn commendable what he brought to this movie, and just like made you feel scared when he's on scene, and like had you sweating during that last fight, like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? You know what I mean?
yeah,
So yeah, kudos to him. I
yeah.
I really I really enjoyed all the screen time he had.
My only, speaking of like wanting more, my only, I feel like the person who got the shortest end of the stick in
Hmm.
just literally across both these movies was Bautista.
Sure.
I really feel like there was a lot more. I understand the character that he had. He played his role. I think he always. I really do enjoy. He's my favorite wrestler turned actor. Like I feel like he can do a lot. He has a lot more range than a lot of other wrestlers that attempt to act. I feel like he's come a long way, and being teamed up with Denis for several movies and seemed to be like one of his go-to guys. That he's. I fully believe that Dave Bautista is going to be in every Denis Villeneuve movie
Hmm.
forever. Um, but it's just I really wanted more. Like I don't know if it was just a little bit more fight with Gurney at the end, or like I that wouldn't have really fixed it. I just really wanted to see more of him, like his character, the setup, the rage, the this. I just felt like more could have been done. And it's just kind of like with him in that role, I just really felt like he got the short end of the stick based upon just the adaptation and what they could do.
Yeah, I agree. I root for Dave to
Hmm.
be, to succeed in Hollywood because he is good at it.
Yeah,
We've all seen it in the three Guardians movies alone, let alone all the other things he's done since then.
yeah,
Uh, I'm glad he was in this movie. I'm glad he's respected in
yeah,
Hollywood in this way where he can get these roles. And he was good in the scenes he had, but yeah,
yeah.
in this movie he could have, I agree with you. So we're on the
I
same
would have
page.
like. I just wanted to see him more. I just
Yeah.
wanted more with him, and
Yeah.
that's all good for me to
Yeah.
say. Like it's not a bash on anybody. It's just I wanted more of him, and I feel like everyone else kind of got their window and they got to shine, and he did get to do that. I just wanted more. Um,
Sure.
and I can't stop talking about the cast without talking about Christopher Walken being the Emperor. And
Yeah.
when we were watching part one, and I can't. I'm going to do it terribly because I'm horrible at this, but I can't do a walk-in. But we were watching Dune Part One, and they started talking about the Emperor, and I was like, "Who's going to be the Emperor in Part Two?" So then I looked it up, and I started laughing. And my wife goes, "What?" And I said, "Oh, I just saw who's going to play the Emperor in Part Two." And she goes, "Who's going to play the Emperor?" And I said, "Christopher Walken." And she immediately said, "Bring me spice." for my spaceship. And she did it way better than me. But like I was dying laughing just that idea of just like doing Dune lines with Christopher Walken, and it was just cracking me up, and I
Yeah.
couldn't not tell that story on
Well,
our
he's
podcast.
yeah, yeah. He's an iconic, obviously iconic guy,
Yeah,
and is definitely pick and choose his roles now at his elevated age. Um, I don't think we've seen him since Severance. Perfect. Um, but
yeah,
yeah,
Severance was perfect.
it's
I
fun
don't
to
watch a lot of TV, but man, I'm ready
yeah,
for Severance season two.
yeah, me too. But yeah, it was great to see him funny, just like there's walking Flo Pugh's dad.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite movies with him is Seven Psychopaths. I love that movie more than I should. It's just a great movie.
Yeah.
So, what about the action? I know we were talking about the sandworm. You're starting to talk a little bit about the knife fight towards the end. This movie was a lot more action heavy. We were definitely pushing towards, um, pushing towards the climax of the story. So there was a lot more like where Dune 1 kind of had most of the action kind of at the end. At the climax, this one had a lot of action throughout. So how do you feel that that was handled? Denis, his films have some action, but these were obviously giant action
Yeah.
sequences, and how they work for you, man.
Everything worked for me. I felt like outside of the slight pacing issues, which we talked about at certain times during this movie, I feel like the action, excuse me, action was really well paced. I mean, what comes to mind from ones we haven't talked about was just one of the closest to the first scenes of the movie was just like those guys, those Harkonnen soldiers, getting sniped one by one, and just
Yeah,
their bodies falling down the cliff and
yeah.
like thumping really hard and just like that visceral noise of them falling off that cliff and hitting the ground was just like, oh shit, like we're in it now. And then other scenes like when the Freeman warriors were attacking them and attacking their posts and attacking their things and popping up out of that sand, and the scene with uh Zendaya and Chalamet like popping up out of the sand and using the rocket launcher to try to shoot the helicopter out. When the guy's running up on her and she turns around and shoots him up into
Oh
the,
yeah,
I was that scene made me like gasp, like
yeah,
literally like oh, like I was just like that's fucking cool, man.
yeah. I'm pretty sure I
Like
yelled "Holy shit" when that
yeah,
happened. I was like, "Oh shit!"
that was the first time in this movie, which many times during this movie I had to do it, but I had to like lean up in my chair and concentrate. Like I have to concentrate on what's happening because what I'm seeing is amazing. Yeah, dude, just the big war sequences where everyone's running at each other and the knife fight at the end, which was so tense and
Yeah.
anxiety, just like the action in this movie was just pitch perfect, perfectly placed, everything, the sound design to go along with it, like the silence during that knife fight at the end, like there's no background music. All you hear is the clanging of daggers and like the grunting and the
Mhm.
huffing and the punching, just like everything just was curated so perfectly that I don't know, man. It just made for a great watch and a great time. I just thought the action was perfect.
Yeah, I enjoyed every action sequence. Like you said, you can just list them. I'm pretty sure you just listed all of them, and yeah, everyone. I'm like, yeah. But even before that action sequence where you talked about like the snipers and they're just getting picked off that mountain, I just was sitting there mesmerized when they started floating.
Oh yes,
And those
yes,
dudes like they were walking and then they just started floating. And the way that they did that, which I'm assuming was probably wires and just didn't look CG, like it
right.
looked real, and it was just so this like floating and being on the big screen as they're just floating up to this mountaintop and just kind of like running up, like I said, obviously probably on wires. It just looked so cool. I think I turned to my wife and I was just like, holy shit, like that's
Yeah,
awesome. Like it's
yeah,
just the way
yeah,
that it looked, it was so stylized and just looked so cool. And then you follow it up with those visceral thuds as they just dropped down a lot harder than they went up,
yeah,
and it was just crazy to me, and I just loved watching those floating, those falling. That was awesome. And then I still can see, I obviously gushed on the riding the worm, but at the end of the movie when they attacked after the emperor was there, and you saw they did that one wide shot where you saw like the worms coming with all the Fremen on the back, from all the different sides, and they just like barreled through the barriers and just started knocking. I was like, holy shit.
Hmm.
That was just insane. Like every scene, I just kept like yelling profanities at the screen, just like out of shock and joy.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And even as I talk about the lady who gasped at the thing, someone who was, I think, with her, but it was some dude behind, he was doing that during that final knife fight. Because I think when they went and like when Paul got stabbed, he was like, "Oh!" like he genuinely felt like,
Yeah.
"Oh shit,
He's like, oh no.
oh no!" Like, and I was just like, "I love all of this. Like, this is those are the experiences that it's like I want to go to the movies for, and I want to watch a movie with other people and sense that." It's not kind of, I guess, Timothy Chalamet adjacent, but I remember that when I went and saw the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp.
Uh-huh.
We went and saw that like opening weekend or something, so it was theaters packed with kids. And I remember sitting there in the theater, and when Charlie opens up his chocolate bar and he sees the golden ticket and you see it, there were like three little kids in there that were like, and they like gasped because they didn't know it was going to happen, and they were just, and I was just like, that is the most adorable thing ever. So it's like moments like that is like why you want to go to the movies. And I was glad, I
Yeah.
was grateful that my showing had those moments and not like obnoxious ones. But
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
the action was outstanding. And I mean, no doubt, Blade Runner 2049 was awesome as well. And the action sequences of that, Sicario was amazing.
Uh, guilty thing I have to admit to. Still haven't seen Blade Runner. Ugh.
2049 or Blade Runner?
No. I've seen Blade Runner, the original, but I haven't seen 2049. And my wife watched it, told me it's amazing. I know you've talked about it. Do I have to watch it? Should I watch it soon? Like, what's my problem?
I was about to say,
What is my
you want to,
problem?
should we move around our schedule and we talk about Blade Runner and
Duh.
2049 following up?
We'll discuss. We'll discuss.
I honestly haven't seen 2049 since theaters. I saw it in theaters and I've never watched it again because of the 3 hours and just committing that time, or the 250 or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that you should probably remedy, especially
Okay.
if you
I think
enjoyed
so
Blade
too.
Runner.
I think so too. And we're about to talk about Denis Villeneuve and his catalog, and there's a couple in there I haven't seen, but just the ones I have,
Mhm.
this dude just I don't know, man. Something about the movies he makes, he's on the same level as people like who we talked about, Christopher Nolan. Um, I don't know. Those two guys are standing
They
out right
really
now
are.
in the movies they make.
Their
Are they
their
not?
movies, and especially after this, I feel like their movies now are like events.
Hmm.
Like Christopher Nolan's kind of been there for a while, where it's like it's a new Nolan movie, it's going to happen. Like I know they kind of had the whatever stutter step with the pandemic and Tenet, and that one's kind of has its mixed audience and mixed fans based on what it is. But every one of his other movies have been events, and with even with Oppenheimer, which shouldn't have been an event. And I know that got a little help from Barbie and all that stuff, but that was still, it's if Oppenheimer was bad and wasn't an event, it wouldn't have happened that way. Like,
Sure,
yeah, you would have
sure.
got a solid opening weekend, but it wouldn't have gotten nearly the level and in which it continued to make money. People
Right.
kept
And
going to see it because it was a good movie.
people still talk about it to this day. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about to
And
win probably best
yeah.
picture tomorrow and best
Right.
director and best actor, and it's
Right.
probably, I think you're going to hear that word a lot tomorrow night.
But like Denis Villeneuve is there
No, he
now. I think
100% is.
he's to the point where I know they've talked about Dune 3, and that's probably gonna happen. I'm sure it will. But
Yeah,
he's also like said, maybe that won't be the next movie I make. I might make something in between, like to do something else.
yeah.
Like just seeing he's now to the point where he's a director of the level of if his name is attached and he's directed it, I
Hmm.
gotta I gotta check it out. I gotta see it.
Yeah,
You
unless
know
he
what I
does
mean?
something just off the wall, like
But like,
definitely not for me. But yeah,
yeah, going back to his first movie, Prisoners, which is amazing. I love that
that's
movie.
that's the only one I haven't seen.
Oh my God, watch it, man. I love that movie. It's like not to the scale of what he does now. Now he has these huge budgets and everything, but it's an amazing movie. I love Arrival too.
I did too. I really enjoyed that movie more
Yeah,
than
yeah,
I thought.
yeah. But I think he's to the level now where it's like if his name is on a movie, I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it. Um, I still got to watch, like I just said, Blade Runner, and I haven't seen Sicario either. But yeah, he's brought himself to that level, and Dune 2 definitely pushed him to that, I think, you know.
It definitely, yeah. I think Blade Runner started it, and then he
Yeah.
followed up Blade Runner with Dune 1 and 2, and you're just like, yeah, this dude knows what he's doing. So yeah, we're good.
Hmm.
So here's money, make movies and make us money, and that's yeah, I 100% agree. His films are going to be events from here on out, unless he makes some really controversial something or other and blows it up. Um,
Yeah.
as long as he doesn't do something stupid, um,
All
I
right.
don't.
If he doesn't pull like a who's that guy who just made that movie with Joaquin Phoenix, who he was on like this huge rise, and then he made that weird recent Joaquin Phoenix movie.
Which Joaquin, right? Joaquin Phoenix just made like 3 movies.
The one with the guy, the Midsummer guy.
Oh, the Beau is Afraid.
Yeah, Bo is Afraid,
Yeah.
which mixed reviews, but like anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. He was. I think he's still hanging in there. That director, Ari
Oh yeah,
Aster. Is that
yeah,
Ari Aster?
R.A. Esther, yeah. Whatever he makes next, people will still go see, but like Bo is Afraid was kind of a bump in the road for him.
Even to a lot of people, Midsummer
Critically,
was too.
I feel that.
There were a lot of
I
people that
liked
watched
Midsummer, but
Hereditary and were super pumped, and then Midsummer was such a
I
swerve.
like
I
I don't get that because I really liked Midsummer.
I did
So
too. I did too. I've
yeah,
watched that one more than I watched Hereditary. So
yeah.
I don't know. I find it disturbing in all the right ways and hilarious in all the right ways. And I don't know, the vibe of Midsummer I checked in with all
Mm,
along the way.
me
So
too. Me too.
I
Anyway,
didn't mind that, and I was kind of excited for Beau's Afraid. I just don't know why I haven't watched it yet. I think it's probably, as we've talked about many times just in this episode alone, the 3 hour runtime. Just kind of, I was just like, do
yeah,
I really want to sit here for 3 hours and watch
yeah.
this? And my wife is not interested in it, so then I have to find 3 hours separate,
Alone. All right.
which is hard, easier said than done. So definitely, but I think Denny event ready to go. So just, I guess, probably trying to wrap up this a little bit. Just from the stories, did you feel lost at any point in this movie, or um,
No, not too much, but there were some parts that just like I had to think hard about what was happening to try to make it make sense. It, I mean, it is a very complicated story that if you aren't kind of paying hard attention the whole
mhm.
time, you could easily get lost. So I'm not going to say this movie is going to be super accessible to everybody in the world. There are going to be people like, this is too complicated. This isn't like easy, but I don't think it's supposed to be easy. You know, you have to think about it a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, so that didn't bother me. Will it suffer from that in some people's eyes? Maybe, but I don't know. I never read the books, and I still feel like I know the book, and I kind of still
yeah,
feel like
there's a
I
lot of
know
books.
everything that's going on. Right. So, no, not nothing crazy with it. It is it's a challenging story though. Like you
Yeah,
kind of have to be focused and paying attention to
well, and
what's going
especially
on.
when, like, I think to me one of the biggest confusing aspects is the fact that, like, Paul technically has like 4 names.
Sure.
So it's like, wait, he's Paul Atreides, he's Maud Deeb, he's the Leah Gasson, he's like, he's every, he's kind
Uso,
of, huh?
Uso or whatever,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
Usul, so it's like he's kind of tied in with all of these, like every prophecy and every like Messiah like character across multiple religions. They all have a different name for him, and he's creating his own names on top of his actual name, on top of prophecy names. So everybody seemed like they were calling him something different, and that is tricky enough to do. And the fact that they did it in a way, but you still have to kind of like know that. Otherwise, you're like, who the hell are they talking about? It's
Yeah.
very, it could be very easy to get lost if you don't. So I can agree with that. But like I said, I think they did a great job of like dumbing it down is probably not the right word for it, but just being able to adapt it in a way in which it does make
Simplifying it
sense.
a
Just
little bit.
simplify it just that little bit that you can roll with it. And like I said, we've all heard like Messiah stories. There's so many different parables. I mean, hell, Superman is a Messiah story. Um, there's so many, especially within popular culture, that all kind of follow the same beats. So it's just like this is just this style of it. And like I said, I feel like once you kind of click on that, then you can
Mhm.
hang. But yes, you're learning a whole other multiple cultures there,
Yeah.
which I think just to me makes the movie feel epic and makes it feel just like I'm watching, even if I don't fully understand everything. And I've read the books and there's still stuff in the movie. I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
So,
Well, even speaking from just like real quick on the culture aspect of it, I love that this movie kind of delved more into this planet of Arrakis
mhm,
and its people. And the first movie is more focused on like, their home and more of a like English king and queen system and just like houses and things. And we
mhm,
get to this movie and we're dealing with more, you know, different people who are all equal, and there's not this this caste system of kings and queens and barons and nobles. It's just like the world building in this movie is really good from part
mhm.
one to part two. It kind of takes you to this whole other level. So I do really appreciate that, like the cultural differences from part one to part two. I think is really important and fun to kind of see that other side of it, that other
Yeah.
side of this universe from part that we saw in part one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And they let you kind of learn the whole, like the native side and
Yeah.
their ways and their culture, and then how they all kind of merge together. And then you have the Reverend Mothers and that whole realm of the religion that's tied in with both sides, but not. And like I said, it becomes a lot, but it's like I said, I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, if you can focus and you can like say to yourself, this is going to be complicated, but I'm going to take it in for what it is. I think you'll really appreciate what everything you have here. It's challenging, like I said, but it's worth it.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that otherwise we're going to keep talking all night. I have
Yeah,
no
we
idea how
we
long this is
could.
end up going to already be in. So I think that that's going to wrap it
Ah,
up
that's okay.
for this conversation. I think we've talked enough about Dune, and I have a feeling like we're probably going to filter it in later with other conversations, especially like I said, if we do come back around to Blade Runner, and we might have some Dune talk in there too. So um, let us know what you thought of Dune 2. Did you enjoy it
Mhm.
as much as we did? Did you hate it a lot more? How'd you feel? You let us know. You find us on social media. We're at Raise the Geek. You can find us across all social media and podcast platforms at Raised Geek. We're also over on YouTube, so you can see our smiling faces and watch our reactions as we're talking and our excitement, which is always fun. So we definitely have fun over there. So hit us up over on YouTube at Raise the Geek, or you can old school us, just let us know with a question or thought at raisethegeek@gmail.com. So definitely hit us up on any of those channels. You know how to find people in this day and age. You know we're looking for subscribers. You know we're looking for reviews. So help us out. It helps out the show a lot. And we can continue on with 132 next week. So we'll figure out what we're going to talk about. It'll be something good, and we'll put it up on those social media channels, bragging about it. So definitely let us know what you thought. But I think as of right now, that's going to do it for us this week and this episode. So for Raise the Geek, I'm Chris.
And I'm done.
And thanks for checking out the show.
Where geek is all we speak.